What's up, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course, that makes this episode 54 of the Circles and Squares PlayStation podcast. And right off the top, we just want to say, so sorry for being away for a few weeks. You know, sometimes life just happens and you can't record, and you just got to deal with that stuff first. But we're back now. We're excited to be here, and I just want to be the first to say, Kate, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Same sentiment. I know both of us were really excited about sitting down to record today because it feels like it's been forever. But yeah, like you said, stuff comes up. Sometimes stuff comes up in a series of
Yeah,
in a row,
a series of
inconveniently.
unfortunate events, you might say.
Series of unfortunate events. Yeah, exactly. Just like that book series.
Great book series.
Oh god, that was like a weird fever dream, that book series. Like,
No,
looking back on it as an adult, like, what the fuck is going on in that
it's really
series?
twisted, right? You know what I would say is
Yeah.
like the Weird Fever Dream is the movie they made of that
Oh
show.
my
Like that
god.
was very strange. Didn't have like Jim Carrey was playing Count Olaf and all.
That I think is the TV show, because there's a movie
Mm,
they made
yeah,
of the
that's what I'm
first
talking
couple
about. The
books,
movie.
and then there's a TV show, and I think the TV show is Jim Carrey, maybe?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Someone, we'll look it up later. Who really cares? um, One other thing off the top of the show, just before we get into it, though. For some reason, the last couple episodes we've recorded, my mic has had some strange issues where my voice just isn't there sometimes. And I've been trying to tweak things in the settings, and I mean, I'm monitoring the mic, and it all looks good on my end, so I don't exactly know what's going on. But if you hear any audio weirdness on the episode, feel free to let us know, circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. It'd be helpful for me if people pointed it out, just so I can maybe go back and look at what happened, but we're working on it. We're gonna make it the best we can, but bear with us if for some reason it gets a bit quiet for a little bit. So the show today, Kate, we're getting back into a regular episode of the Circles and Squares podcast, which means we're going to be talking about the games we've been playing recently. Alongside, we're going to switch in some news about the PS Plus games for May because we didn't have a news show to start the month. And finally, Kate has made us a triumphant return to the quiz, a Circles and Squares staple, which we love doing over here. So Kate will be quizzing me, and I believe you said it was on some bad game reviews, which of course is, if
Yeah.
quizzes are classic for our show, the bad game reviews quiz is like the most authentic version of the quiz. So looking forward to that. And of course, we'll close out the show with listener mail at the end, which we have an interesting question I'm excited to answer to close the show out. But anyway, let's talk about the games we've been playing first. And Kate, you've played a game that ranked very highly on our top games of all time list. We did a few episodes ago. So please, let's talk about Detroit Become Human.
Yes, so I pushed hard for this game on our most recent, I think episode 53, the most recent we did our combined list. I pushed hard for Detroit. And as time goes by and I look back on this game, my feelings just increase in fondness. Like, this game did a very special thing for me in which it struck an intense emotional chord.
Mm,
And this is one of those games where it is like, games are art, and shut up if you disagree, because this tells a beautiful story. And not only that, it is impressive as all hell. Like, I've been doing some research, and like, Detroit is one of those, I guess, like an interactive story kind of game.
yeah,
The
Quantic
gameplay is,
Dream, right?
yeah, it's Quantic Dream. The gameplay is pretty light. You make choices and you do quick time events, and that's the extent of it. But my god, does this game just blow the rest out of the water. Like, we compared it to other Quantic Dream games like,
Heavy
Heavy
Rain,
Rain and
Beyond.
Beyond Two Souls, which I think I haven't played yet, so I'm excited to tackle
Yeah,
that
I have
next.
played that one. That one's, I would say, my least favorite of the
Okay, interesting.
library. But
And
yeah,
Heavy Rain feels a lot like you're experiencing the story and making it through to the end, right? Because it's always the same killer.
hmm
The characters kind of seem to follow a, a similar trajectory, and it's more about like, did you keep them alive? Like, how successful were they? I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. It's kind of just like
Whereas,
different variations of getting to the same destination.
yeah, exactly. Whereas Detroit really feels like you're making choices that change who the characters fundamentally are. And that's pretty crazy to do. So I've watched like some like videos about the making of the game, and things like that. And so like, I just have a couple like facts, I guess, to
Okay,
start
cool.
out with
Let's do it.
before I too into talking about it. So there are 83 different endings for Detroit Become Human,
Really?
which
That's a
is a
lot.
lot. Now, some of those are like combinations because you play the 3 different characters, and so, like, you might get ending like 1 for Marcus, and then ending 1 for Kara, and then ending 1 for Connor, but then you might get 112 and 113, and so, like, some of them are overlapped in
Right. Yeah,
different
yeah,
ways,
yeah.
but the way that they intertwine does still change things, so it's 83 endings with a small asterisk that, like, some are pretty similar. Um, but then and now these facts are kind of they're compared to movies, which I think is like a generalization, but apparently the average movie has a 100 word script, like, for, like, character dialogue, and that's gonna change, like,
Mhm.
per movies. Obviously, action movies are gonna have a little less because there's more, like, stuff happening and, like, maybe a drama or romance might have more because, like, that's the
Yeah, yeah,
focus. So,
yeah.
apparently 100 is kind of like it seemed really low to me, but apparently that's a ballpark,
Like, per character or per, like, the whole movie?
like, per the whole movie, so that seemed kind of low.
That
That's
seems
like
very low.
like, that seems low, but even if we say, like, 500 maybe is more realistic. And it takes apparently approximately and again, these stats did not these stats just came from the internet somewhere. They could be very
Sure,
wrong.
sure. It's an interesting
But
reference
apparently
point, though.
when they do mocap, it's 2 to 3 months of filming. Detroit filmed mocap for a year, and they have a 5,000 word script.
Wow.
So, that's pretty insane, and to be fair, it's longer than a movie. Like, you play
Right.
this game, like, a lot longer than you watch a movie. But, like, the amount of writing that went into this to do, like, all of the characters and how each scene goes slightly differently depending on what you do and, like, how many various things, like, when I got to the end of the game, there's, like, it shows you kind of, like, your progression with, like, the tree system that they have, which I'll get more into later.
Mhm. Oh,
But, like, there
fantastic.
are trees that are just completely blank to me because it's like I didn't do anything that made that tree. And so, like, when you're looking at stats, it's like I have nothing on this, like 2 or 3 whole trees that are just like whatever the fuck that could have been. So this game is like a masterpiece of like keeping it organized and writing this game is like an absolute feat. And this game like took like 2 or 3 years to be made, I think, like which is just
Seems quick, right?
insane.
Yeah.
Seems quick, so I'm just, like, first of all, impressed by this game, but more importantly, this game is fucking good to play on top of its technical achievements, so, I don't wanna spoil too much. I might kind of give some trajectory, especially for Connor,
Yeah, I
who
think it's
spoiler
okay to lightly spoil. I mean, it's not a new game, and it's really hard to talk about without any
and
story
also,
points, so.
like, if you play, your experience is probably gonna be different than mine because you'll
Mhm.
make different choices, but I just, like, fell head over heels in this game, especially with the character Connor. He is potentially, like, my favorite character of any video game. Like,
Oh, wow.
I felt so invested in this character because you have the 3, and the idea is, like, you're in this, future world. It's kind of sci-fi, but it's more of just, like,
It's like a
a
dystopian type of
realistic.
future of, like, what if androids developed and became sort of
Yeah,
like a
so
new
it's
version of slaves for people in the
yes,
future.
exactly. So the idea is that like Amazon's just had a few more years to figure this out and they've made androids and they basically have just taken over everything. Like society relies on them to do jobs and like everyone has them, even like poor or rich, everybody's got them in their house to do chores and like people are like, having androids as life partners. And so it's just it's technically sci-fi, but it is very much just kind of like realistically placed into our world versus having kind of like outrageous or unrealistic concepts. So I like the setting a lot because it's got a lot of like real world groundedness to it, and it isn't very difficult to imagine something like this happening in 25 years if the technology was
Sure.
capable of it. And so you play as 3 different characters, and the difference between them all is really neat. Like, you get Kara, who is kind of the most, like, intimate character, I would say. Like, she's got the whole storyline with Allison taking care of this young girl, and a lot of her scenes are even the way that they're filmed are very, like close camera shots, and you just get a sense of really, like, a lot of warmth with Kara. She's taking
Mm,
care of this daughter, and she's not really too worried about, like, the grand scheme of things. She just wants to get somewhere safe and kind of, like, have a family. And then you have Marcus, who's the, like, revolution leader, and he's all about the grander scale of, getting rights for androids and recognizing that they have emotions and they're not just these like machines, and that they like deserve a chance to live, which is like just a really interesting commentary on like the capability of life and AI and like what makes
right.
a human in general.
Yeah, right.
And so his gameplay is a lot more like action focused, and he's got the grand sweeping shots and these big like
Like the
exciting
heist
narrative
scenes and all
moments.
that type of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, and so, like, the music is a little bit more bombastic and drastic when Marcus is on screen. And then you have my personal favorite, Connor, and Connor, to me, is the heart of this game because Kara and Marcus, they are going to do those things regardless. Like, Kara's gonna, try to take care of Alice and have, like, a small intimate story, and Marcus is gonna get involved with the revolution, and, there's a lot of changes you can make to those, like, whether or not it's violent or peaceful and, like, if, who dies, who makes it, what kind of leader you wanna be. There's a lot to do as player agency. But when you get to Connor, Connor is very much not a deviant, which I guess is important
Hmm.
to say, like, deviants are the androids that, like, stop just blindly following rules and being robots and start to, like, have free will and self-expression and thought. And so when you start as Connor, there's cracks that he is going to go deviant, but he's very, like, straight and, like, I'm a detective cop, and I'm gonna solve the murder or solve the mysteries of these androids that are acting weird. And you can see, like, it from the beginning, "Oh, we're gonna make him a deviant, we're gonna break him out, and he's gonna go rogue and join the other side." But it's very much up to you as a player if Connor goes down that road
Hmm.
or if he just stays as, like, an antagonist to the other 2 characters. And that to me is so cool because I felt like the whole time I was not just experiencing his story, but I was trying to save him the whole
Right.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is a very interesting relationship to have with a character that you don't normally get in video games.
That's a really good point. I think I would agree with you that Connor was my favorite as well when I was playing. I
Mhm.
just felt like he something about him is just so endearing. And I'm just looking through some awards actually. He won a few awards for playing Connor, the guy. His name's oh, where was it? I just lost it here. Um Brian Deschart. He played Connor.
Mhm.
He won the Golden Joystick Awards Best Performance, and he also won Best Character from the Italian Video Game Awards. So I
Mhm.
mean, he was definitely recognized, and yeah, he was a great character. I want to ask you like which was the one you think you resonated with the least? Because I have a tough time thinking about that. Like, I really enjoyed Kara's storyline and kind of the way it. I think she was the one that best demonstrated sort of the idea of human emotions being
Yeah.
and like that protective parent nature of
Mhm.
what's so like that's such a human thing, right? And well, I guess it's like a lot of living things, but that's even more evidence because androids are not technically living, right? So
Right.
the exploration into that with her was great, and then I think Connor had like the action like when the game picks up and gets fast and like it does have some moments where it goes, and I really enjoyed those. But I feel like he was probably my least favorite to play overall if I had to pick.
Okay, interesting. I honestly couldn't tell you, like, the thing about this game to me is that even though you're playing kind of 3 separate storylines, for the first, I would say, like, for the first half of the game, they're kinda separate and then they converge, but everything about this game feels so cohesive to me that it's so hard to pick because even though I jump around, like, they're so intrinsically tied to each one, and they're all kind of just showing an aspect of the same question,
Mhm.
and I just find that so interesting that all 3 of them were so exciting to me. Like, there's never a character I was like, "Oh, it's Kara again, damn it." Like, I was always excited to see where it would go next, and changing up the kind of atmosphere and the pacing I thought was really good in the game as well. Like, you get a really action-focused, like, Marcus or Connor scene, and then you'd go into, like, "Okay, Kara, like, we need to find somewhere to sleep tonight because,
Oh my god, that was
Alice is, like
heartbreaking.
Alice is gonna be cold and, like, I'm worried she's gonna get sick." And so, like, you go from these big moments where you're tackling these, like, larger issues to these the smaller issue. But at the same time, like, it's always so focused on, like, look at how these androids are doing the same kind of things that humans do, right? Like, they want autonomy, they wanna be able to express themselves, they wanna care for each other, they whether that's with a family or in, like, an intimate relationship, or to be able to, like, just kind of, like, do something fun and, like, joke around and blow off some steam, and, like, they're
Hmm.
doing such, like, human things at all times, and it's just answering, or it's asking that question. It's like, well, what makes humans different than other living things, right? And it's like, well, if they're having these feelings just because they're machines, does that make it any less valid than, like, an organic material? And, like, it's a really, like, introspective game that kind of makes
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
such a sucker for the, like, what is it about humans that drives us to, like, feel these emotions and do these things, and, like, that I'm just, like, a sucker
Yeah,
for
it's
that
like
kind of
so
topic.
big
So
picture, right? It's so it
yeah,
makes you think. It's like thinking about space or something, like some of those
yeah.
infinitesimal kind of questions that you could just explore forever and ever. And it is a really
Mhm.
special part of this game for sure.
It is, and I just think it's masterfully crafted. Like, the writing is amazing, the set pieces are so good, like, it is really clever, and the acting is fantastic for this game. Like, you can see how much mocap work went into it. Like, when you look at the behind the scenes of the actors and then look at them in the game, they're, like,
Hmm.
identical. It's incredible, and the amount of emotion that's conveyed, and I think if this wasn't as good as it was, the game wouldn't land so hard, because a lot of it is conveyed through, like, obviously the dialogue is important, but just the way the characters carry themselves. Like, you can see pain or fear in their eyes. It's very recognizable, and it connects with you. And for them to go from the beginning of the game to being a little bit, like, lifeless looking, especially Connor. He starts out and he's
Hmm.
very,
He's
like,
very robotic.
cold. He's very robotic, he's very cold, the way he talks, the way he walks, the way he kind of looks at other characters, it's very devoid of emotion. And then you get those cracks where, you see, like, a moment of fear in his eyes, and then he quickly gets it away because, he's an android, not supposed to be scared. But you see that, and you know that there's that potential, and then by the end of the game, like, he's very expressive, and so the actor is just, like, busting his ass completely to make that work. I can't imagine that's an easy role to
No, I
do,
mean,
right?
definitely not. And especially because you have to play every single one of these characters in
Yeah.
multiple different versions of themselves, because you're going to go from, like, with Connor, you could have him, he can go down quite a dark path. And that's like what I did with him. But I would imagine there's a way to play him as a bit more like of a lighter side. And so that you have to have such a range as an actor to be able to take on these roles as well. That's something that's,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a
That's
lot of nominations, right? I think it's deserved.
That's interesting you got a darker Connor, because in my story, I made Connor get to the end, and first of all, him and Hank became
Oh,
buddies, and
sorry.
I
You
was
know what? I said Connor. I meant,
oh,
who's his face?
Marcus?
Marcus.
Oh, I
I meant
see, I
Marcus.
see. Oh, so you took more of a violent
You know
approach?
what I did? And what I did is I
Ah,
just often honestly don't ever really take those type of paths. Like, I'm thinking of games like Mass Effect, like I always play the good guy. And so
mhm.
I had a really good time playing Disco Elysium, because you got me thinking about that, of like when I restarted my character and
Yep,
went down the path of like the, you know,
Chris first.
ruffian
Yeah.
type of character, and I really enjoyed that. So when I played Detroit, I had a similar mindset where I was like, you know what, I got three characters here. I'm being like as good as I can with the other two. Let's just send this guy down the darkest path possible and like see what happens, right? Like, see
Yeah.
what this type of experience is.
Well, what's neat about Detroit too, and what I like about it, is that the game isn't necessary. I mean, the game is, like, it is commenting on things, right? It is
Oh yeah.
commenting slavery bad, freedom good. Like, it is making those kind of statements, but it is acknowledging that there is a big gray area in how you make that work within a society, because a lot of people are really prejudiced against androids. Androids take
Hmm.
my jobs, and, like, oh, like, I don't want this scum interacting with me, and, like, Connor goes to investigate a case, and it's like, well, why'd you send an android? I want a
Yeah,
human to solve
exactly.
this with me, right? And so there's a lot of prejudice, and they have a lot of, Marcus, I think, gets beat up one day in the street just because he's an android. And so obviously the game is saying, like, that's horrible, and we need to, like, be kind and love each other and be accepting and all good messages. But it doesn't shy away from the reality that change is difficult, and
Hmm.
that kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. So what I really like about Marcus's story is that he's kind of leading a group of androids that are free and trying to get them, safety and get them to a place where they can be accepted in society and kind of, just live amongst humans.
Hmm.
And you sort of meet other people that uh, kind of urge him to take a nonviolent approach because, like we don't want to sink to their level and we want to show that we're above that. And like,
Hmm.
we don't want to solve this by conflict. We want a peaceful resolution. And there's other characters that say, like, well, that's not going to get us anywhere. They're never going to listen to peace. They're just going to kill us. And then we've gotten nowhere. We have to exert some force to show them that, like, we're serious and push back against this oppression. And so the game doesn't really tell you that either of those is
Sure,
correct,
sure.
but it does tell you that, like, those are two valid strategies and, like, you want the same outcome, but, like, how do you actually, like, effectively
Right.
make that change? And so I like that about the game too, where it's not just like, "Oh, Marcus is a bad guy versus a good guy." It's like, is he like, what kind of choice is he taking to try to get the best for his people? And, like, I imagine if he does like, I we took a very pacifist route when I played.
Hmm.
So, Marcus was more of like a martyr in a sense than anything else.
Right. Yeah, mine was
And
like a
he
revolutionary, like,
and yeah,
aggression
and yours
guy.
is more of like a hero and my
Yeah.
character is more of a martyr, but, like, I think that's really interesting, and I would love to see,
Yeah.
how different that plays out.
We'll have to compare our branching paths at some point. I'd love to go through the
Yeah.
game again and
Well,
explore.
so what is neat, and this is a nice quality of life, maybe talked about the branching paths a little bit, is this is something that the game does. So after the game is split into chapters. So you play through a chapter, and that usually follows a character. Then you go to the next chapters, the next character, and then that's how the game's broken down. And at the end of every chapter, you get this beautiful, beautiful flow chart of all of the choices that you made. And it's astounding just how
There's a
many there
lot.
are in every single chapter. And what it does is it shows you, like, like, you locked yourself out of this path because you did X, or, like, here were 8 things that you could have interacted with in this one room. You interacted with these 7, and the other one, well, you missed it. Um, and stuff like that. And what I really like later too is as you get further into the game, you get, like, parts of the path that's like, because you did X in chapter 2, you got to follow this a little bit more. And it
Right, because
does
certain
tell
routes
you,
get
like,
locked off for you if you don't.
exactly. And so it does tell you, like, where it's connecting to in previous chapters, which is neat. But one of the other really nice quality of life that I did is they have you can view, like, the stats of the everybody did, and also the stats of what your friends did on your
Oh, so
like
did you see
PlayStation
my stuff?
account. Well, it didn't tell me exactly what you did in particular. It just gives you the percentage. So
Okay.
it tells you, like, 75% of players chose this option, 25 chose this other option. But it was kind of neat because I got to look at my friends. I was like, oh, like, you guys did this. And I wonder who it was that chose that
Right,
route.
right,
So
right.
that was kind of fun. And the funniest part was there was one person that clearly fell off partway through the game and didn't finish it. So I clearly went from having like 5 people. Now all of a sudden the
Out of
numbers reflect
yeah,
4 people. And I was like, oh no. And
yeah.
so it's like, oh, someone lost a character. Like, no.
I think that whole branching path thing is just such a nice quality of life improvement as well. Like I
Mhm.
think about when I went back to try and get the platinum for Heavy Rain because I wanted to see all the different outcomes. And it was just kind of a pain because you had to use a guide and sort
Yeah.
of jump around, where in this I'm sure a guide would still make it easier, but at the same time you can literally just go in and examine the branches and see what you
Mhm.
need to do. So it makes it
Yeah.
really easy on maybe like a second playthrough. Like when I if I play it again, I would definitely like examine the paths and like pick out what I want to go and see the second time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also lets you just start from any chapter. Like, you
Hmm.
can look at the path and just say, I want to replay chapter 5. And you can replay chapter 5, and then you can either, like, take that into, like, kind of like a new version of your safe game where,
Hmm.
like, now you're going from 5 on, but that change is different. Or you just play 5 and, like, okay, perfect. Like, I'm done. I just saw that scene. That's
Yeah.
fine. And that is a huge quality of life because, yeah, this is definitely one of those games where, like, the first thing you do when you finish it is go, okay, and what could have happened if I did something different?
Exactly.
And that's the beauty. So I just cannot be more into this game. There's a couple other things I want to shout out. Just some of the level design
Yeah.
is incredible. It's gorgeous. There are mirrors. One of the first things I noticed about this game is there are mirrors everywhere. almost every single chapter, there is at least one, if not more, mirrors that your character can walk over to. And like you've kind of got like detective vision in this game, which is really nice. You just press a button and it shows you things you can interact with. So like it's you don't miss stuff. But the game also has interactables that don't show up there, and just it's if you get close enough, you get a prompt. So it is still, like, encouraging you to look around and explore if you want to, or you can just, like, highlight, "Okay, these are the 6 things I can click on. I'll go click on those." So it's got a nice balance for, like, what style you wanna have, but every time you go up to a mirror, you can press whatever R2, whatever the prompt is, and look at the mirror, and you can just your character's just staring at themselves in this mirror, and it's like the whole game is just like self-reflection, and they've put that in there in so many places, like just the idea of you're constantly like looking at yourself and evaluating who you are is just it's such a simple, like silly symbolic thing, but I caught onto it early and then I just spent the whole rest of the game like, "That's a mirror,
Interesting.
that's a mirror, that's a mirror,
I
go
didn't
look
pick
at
up
it."
on that myself.
And I just love little things like that, and my potential I mean, Connor's the best character ever, let's be honest. Him and Hank are the fucking
I was
best
gonna say
buddy
we.
cop
I was gonna
duo.
shout out Hank before we ended talking about this game
We
because
gotta shout out
what a great
Hank.
character he is.
Yo, I learned some dark shit with Hank, like, there is, like Hank and I made it to the end as buddy bros, and we had, like, a good scene at the end where, like, him and Connor are, like, tight as hell,
Yeah,
but, like,
yeah.
holy shit, can that go very, very, very differently. Um, but him and the other character I think is the best character is Carl, from
Who's
the
Carl
supporting
again?
cast, and Carl is the artist that Marcus lives with.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. In the
And
mansion or whatever.
in the mansion, and so Marcus has to leave for various reasons, but Carl has definitely been kind of, like, treating Marcus like a human the entire time and really sees him that way, and there's some really nice scenes, and there's one early on where Marcus or Connor or, Carl is an artist, he gets Marcus to paint. Marcus is like, "What would you like me to paint? Like, I can paint anything, I'm an android, I'm good at everything." And Carl tells him and I wrote down this quote because it just was so beautiful and it stuck out to me. And he responds to Mark and says, "Marcus, painting is not about replicating the world. It's about interpreting and improving upon it, showing something only you can see." And then you
Mhm.
as the player get to pick what Marcus paints after that, and
Right.
so, you pick, like you can be like, "Oh, a flower pot," because whatever, that's, something, like, physical, tangible you can paint. Or you paint something like, "I wanna paint truth." And it's like, "Well, what is truth?" But Marcus paints what truth looks like to him or his interpretation of it. And that's just, like if that's not the most quintessential thing of, like, what makes humans so interesting and is like a portal into our like souls and our emotions. It's like, what do you paint when you want to paint the concept of truth,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And like, what a way to kick off a game that's going to be
yeah.
about like humanity. And so I just always think of Carl and just, oh, I love Carl and Hank and Connor and like, man, like we talk about like Persona and you fall in love with the characters in the
Yeah.
cast, but like, holy shit, like Detroit, I just fell in love with all of the characters here so much.
I was gonna say that sounded like a Yosuke quote from Persona that about the painting there.
Yeah, and then well, I mean, he followed up by asking for some money or something.
Yeah, and complaining about being hungry or something like. Yeah,
But
great game,
yeah,
right? It's
great game.
it's truly something I think that would it's impossible to play it without being made to think about like bigger topics in the real world or like, like big ideas of what it means to be a person. I think we've conveyed that really
Mhm.
well, but it really is like it's a special game. Whether you like
Yeah.
it or not. I know there's some controversy around it in the studio and all that, but whether you like it or not, it does have something to say, and it even if you don't agree with 100% of it, it's like it's or whatever your opinion is, it's gonna make you think about stuff, and I think it's always special.
Yeah, and I think it's a good example of one of those kind of games where it's like video games are the only medium that you can do this in, right? Like this would make a wonderful movie or a wonderful book because the world is so well crafted and the characters are so interesting, but it's not the same as having that agency that you actually get to,
Hmm.
enact in the game. It isn't just like, "Oh, I choose the bad choice or I choose the good choice," or like, my character is this archetype now, and so you just kind of get those shallow choices. This really felt like I crafted an experience that was unique to me and that nobody else would have the exact same one when they played. And,
Hmm.
like, it's not easy choices. You're not picking, these stock 4 things. Like, there were times where I 100% cheated by pausing the game in the 2-second timer you have to pick, pausing the game, like, sitting there stressed for, like, 20 minutes deciding what to do. And, like, it's just an emotional roller coaster, but it's also fun and beautiful and funny and, like, it's an experience as much as it is a game, and when you're in the mood for something like this, it's very special.
There you have it, everybody. Go check out Detroit Become Human. Highly recommended by this show. It's moving on up with Astrobot as like
Yeah.
games that we need to get everyone to play. No,
Right,
it's
yeah.
Astrobot. It's Detroit Become Human. It's God of War. It's all the
Mhm.
good stuff. Speaking of some good stuff, or stuff that I was surprised was as good as it was, I want to tell you about my experience with Killzone Mercenary, because what a weird game to talk about in 2022, right? Like, why not? But this is a game I picked up recently. I found it on the cheap, and it's interesting. Like, I find Killzone is fascinating as a franchise. I don't know what it is. Like, I feel like I've talked about it a few times. Like when we did that bracket challenge, I was talking about Killzone. It's just fascinating to me how shooters can be so popular, especially back in like the 2010s. But Killzone, for whatever reason, like even though it had a number of entries, it never really was like known too much. It's kind of just like one of those things where if you have a PlayStation, maybe you're playing it if you know, you're like a one off, but it just doesn't seem like it ever caught on, even though it has a ton of games. But this one was the Vita game that came out in 2013 alongside Shadowfall, which was the PS4 launch game. And so I've never actually played Shadowfall. I think the only Killzone I've played is like Killzone 2 way back on the PS3. So this is pretty new for me. But you know what? I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It was a nice little short. It only took me like 4 hours to beat it. On the Vita, I mean, it was a little bit to get my head around like the thumbsticks on it. They're just nowhere near as like you can't grip it the same way. Like I have my Vita here for video listeners,
Mhm.
coincidentally actually, but it's like if you're playing a shooter on something like this, it's like you
Right.
don't have the same grip with your fingers down here, and like these little sticks are like, you know, not the most responsive thing compared to what you have on a controller. So it took me a little bit to kind of get used to playing it. But once you get into it, and it's actually a lot of fun. Like it moves really quick. You're shooting guys all the time. You're switching out your weapons. Um, there is like really nice satisfaction of like when you get a headshot, which for some reason I'm sure there must be like an aim assist thing going on because I found that I was pretty accurate, and the
Mhm.
headshot will happen and it'll have like this sound effect that comes out, and then you'll gain points for, I'll tell you about it in a sec, but it's just like really satisfying to play. And yeah, I mean, great game. um
Interesting. So, like you said about Killzone, and this is like just gonna give you more justification. I know nothing about Killzone.
yeah.
Like it, I'm not a big shooter person in general. Like we know, I've been brainwashed into playing some Destiny, but aside from that, I'm not a big shooter person. Of course, but I've played Halo. I've played Call of Duty and like those kind of games because they have a social thing, just being over at people's houses and like, let's play some
Yeah,
Call of Duty,
yeah.
whatever. You do that. But obviously, because Killzone's the weird like black sheep of the shooter genre, nobody's ever asked me to play some Killzone.
No, the real black sheep
Never
is
done that.
Resistance Fall of Man. That's the
Oh
black sheep.
god.
Killzone is better than that.
All right. All right. Killzone's like a dark gray sheep, I suppose then. But what about Killzone makes it different from like
um
what is its hook compared to some of these other
you know,
shooters?
I think one of the reasons I like it is it's kind of like it's sci-fi, right? Like it's sort of like, and I'm talking from playing only two of these games, one of them like 10 years ago. So take it with
Right.
a grain of salt, but it's kind of like it's like a big world war, right? Like it's the Helghast, which are kind of like, I don't know if they're supposed to be Nazi type characters, but they're like an evil sort of army, and then there's the
Mhm.
good guys, but there's always corruption on both sides. Like even in this game, you play as a different character, you're a mercenary, but you're really not. You switch teams depending on the mission you're on, and you're more loyal to
Right.
like making money through like being a merc basically.
Mhm.
So but it's like a kind of like a World War II setting, but just turn it into remove like the labels of Nazi and like
Mhm.
allies, and then just move it into a sci-fi space. But what's cool about it from a gameplay perspective that I really think is fun is that it plays very similar to it's very grounded in the way that you control your character. Like a lot of the more sci-fi shooters like Halo, they have like a very spacey jump or like
Mhm.
shields and all this stuff, and you can have some of that in Killzone, but it's more like grounded in the way you control your character. But then you get some interesting sort of sci-fi weapons and abilities. Like one of my favorite things in this game was you go into the store and you have your loadout, and you kind of earn credits as you kill enemies, and it's a cool system with the credits. I'll just tell you about that first, because as you're killing guys, you earn money, and then you come across these like buy stations as you're going through the levels. But what's cool is when you die, you pay like a I guess a revival fee out of your credits, but you still get to keep everything that you earned before you
Okay.
died. So you can sort of use that as a way to save up for a new gun or like refill your ammo for your next time through, because you're still profiting and you're able to like buy new armor or whatever you want for your character. And so that I guess that's kind of something that sets it apart too, is like you get to buy your loadout and change.
Right.
Um,
That's kind of a cool progression system. It's
mhm.
almost like a very light, like, loot mechanic
Yeah,
in those
kind
kinda
of,
games
kind
where,
of.
like, typically, like, you just find guns on the ground or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, the guns again, they're sort of like sci-fi skinned regular guns for the most part, but there's some really cool stuff that happens later on. Like there's this thing called the Vanguard system, which there's always like a special ability of your character in Killzone. So I remember in the earlier ones you'd have like invisibility, and you could go in and kind of stealth kill guys from behind with your melee or whatnot. And in this one they have something called the Vanguard system, which is like a they're different drones that you can sort of buy, and they're a helper for you. And you have certain ones that you start off with, and you can have like it's just like a little companion turret, or you can get a jammer, which is sort of um, going to take out some of the enemy weapons. And then later on, as you save up more and more and you have more money towards the end, you get some really cool ones. Like I had this one which was like a shock drone, and so it would fly beside me, and when guys came close it would like zap them and stun them so I wouldn't be able to get hurt. And I could also
Mhm.
send it forward, and it would like fly ahead of me in the room and go and get guys but then be destroyed or whatever. And then my favorite one was something called the Sky Fury, which is like very, very cool. It would give you like a bird's eye view, like it would be launched into the sky, and you would see the map that you're standing on if you're outside, and you could see where your character is. Like you're hopefully you took cover before you launched it, because you're just standing there.
Right, yeah. You launch it and just die
So
immediately.
I mean, be careful, but it's cool. Like it begins to highlight all the enemies on the map in like these red markers, and you have to use the Vita touchscreen and like touch where you want to shoot,
Ah,
and it
that's
like
kinda cool.
bombs down. It's kind of like that weapon in Gears of War, like the Hammer of Dawn or whatever, where
Yeah,
you
Hammer
call
of
the light
Justice,
from the
something like
sky.
that.
Yeah, something like that. But it's like that, and there's kind of a cooldown, so you gotta be kind of tactical where you're aiming. But it was just kind of fun, and it took advantage of the Vita in a way that was like not annoying. Like I would rather have used the touchscreen than try and move some reticle with the joystick. Like it was actually
Mhm.
better that they used the touch controls for that. And similar, there's another one that's like a lock-on missile drone. So you kind of have like a War Machine style missile launcher, and you can
Mhm.
activate that and then tap enemies you see on the screen from like your character's perspective and shoot
Yeah,
them. So it's just
that's
kind of like
pretty
that
cool.
tinge of futurism, I guess, that I
Mhm.
really like about Killzone. Um,
Right.
I mean, the story's nothing to write home about. It's kind of like there's this virus, and both sides are fighting for it, and you're just trying to get it to make money, and it is what it is.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a war game, sure.
yeah, it's not the story's not great, but I mean, there's some funny characters like, especially the shop owner. He's sort of like this brash Russian guy, and he's just like, "Hey, I don't care who wins. Like, just keep making me money," kind of sentiment. Have little
Yeah.
lines for you as you come in, so it's kind of endearing in that way. One thing that was really disappointing though, just about the game, was that the online obviously doesn't work anymore because
Right.
it's been shut down, and which is too bad, because the online is kind of cool. From what I could tell, it sort of ties into your progression from the game itself. Like as you're killing guys, you're gaining currency, but you're also gaining experience points, which contributes to, I guess, your rank. And I think your rank is like for the entire game, not just campaign versus
Oh, okay,
multiplayer.
cool. So, like, it maybe plays into matchmaking online as
I'm not
well? Like
sure. I mean, I probably should have looked into it, but I just kind of
yeah.
forgot about it because it doesn't exist.
Well,
But
you can't use it anyway,
exactly.
so
But the other
yeah.
cool thing too, like the credits that you spend in the campaign is like how you unlock weapons for multiplayer. I'm pretty sure. So you'd have like, oh, I really want to have the rocket launcher, so I'm gonna go and buy that. Or like I bought a sniper rifle, and it ended up being so unfortunate in the campaign. Like it kind of sucked with the levels, but I would imagine maybe there was some multiplayer where you'd want a sniper. So it's like maybe you want to buy that instead of focusing on stuff for the story, or just kind of a cool way to tie the two together. I know there's a lot of times where people will buy a game like a shooter and just only play the multiplayer and never touch the single player. But I love that
Mhm.
they're kind of integrated like that in this game, and it's for someone like me that would love to go through the campaign. It's sort of like a reward for doing so.
Hmm. Okay, that's kind of cool. It's a shame. When did they shut down the Vita servers? Do you remember? Like it's been a
I'm not
while,
sure. I
right?
mean, the servers are. I don't know if every game has been shut down. I think it might be more of a
Yeah.
case by case basis. Like the store still
Okay.
works. I can still buy stuff digitally on,
Right.
but there's no like Killzone doesn't have any functionality. I mean, it probably
Yeah.
never had a huge player base to start
Right.
with.
I
Let's be
can't.
honest,
Yeah.
but
They're not gonna keep it on for those 10 people still
yeah,
playing,
no,
but a
yeah, but
shame.
it's a cool game. Like I think if you have a Vita, it's fun. There might be a demo on the store or something. Like it won IGN's Vita Game of the Year for from E3 on the year it came out,
Well,
2013. So who knows what the competition really was? I know that the Vita has a bit of a
yeah.
struggling library at points, but it was a fun game, and I'm glad I played it. Nice and short, something different. So that's great, and
Mhm.
it's always nice to have an excuse to pull out the Vita, because I love that system. I wish it did better. Um, I would play anything on it if it came out. So I'll try and play more in the future. I also picked up a copy of one of the Sly Cooper collections or
Oh,
something
okay,
for
okay,
Vita
yeah.
for a good deal. So I'm going to talk about that. I don't know, sometime this year. We'll see. Um, we have one more game to talk about though, Kate, and I'm very excited to have played this. Um, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll have seen me. I think I tweeted when I finished it, but I played through on the Nintendo 64 online service, Paper Mario, the original, a game that is very special to both of us. One of our, I guess, like formative games from being kids, right? Like it's one of the fondest I remember, right up there with Pokemon and Smash Bros and all that good stuff, Crash Bash. But
Yes.
yeah,
So
it was interesting.
I am so excited to hear what you think because we have not talked about this ahead of time. And I think it's really neat because I went back and it was years ago now, so it's not the freshest, but I have gone back as an adult and played through Paper Mario, which is, as you said, arguably like top 5 most nostalgic games that we went through as kids. So I still have an extremely positive view of this game. I think it is a fantastic game. And I was surprised by how well it held up. And so I'm interested to see if your experience has been similar or if you think that, oh my God, what we had such low standards and what the hell is Paper Mario?
You know what? I will inform you that I am right there with you. This game is a rock solid experience. It is
It
so fun.
is so
I mean,
good.
where do you start, right? Like, so this is an interesting thing for me too, because it's my first time having played it as an adult. And since the last time I'd played Paper Mario, I've now also played Mario RPG. So I sort of have the context of
Mhm.
like where it came from. And I don't know if that really changed my opinion on the game, but I think it just reminded me, like playing that game, how much I really like this franchise, and that hasn't changed. I'm so happy to. It's always a risk, right, when you play something from your
Yeah,
childhood and you're like, oh my god, am I
absolutely.
going to tarnish my memories of what this was, or is it going to be fun? But no,
Yeah.
this is fun. It holds up really well. I think just the only criticism I can really say about it to get it off the top is that it's just very easy. Like
Yeah.
there's not really any challenge, and I'm sure a part of that is my familiarity with the game and understanding the mechanics, I know there's a few places, like I actually got lost in the flower fields, like even though I've played the game so many times, but there is a few places where it can be a little ambiguous as to where you're supposed to go, sort of those type of problems. But in general, the game's pretty simple, and so I mean,
Yeah,
if that's a negative for you, then take it for what it
I
is.
can agree with that, but I think at the same time, like, I don't think the game necessarily gets a ton of improvement from being
No,
difficult,
no, no, no.
but it definitely is like it is definitely simplistic and, something that was intended for a younger audience,
Sure,
and that shows through, and as an adult, sometimes, it's not always the most riveting, and I think the other thing I remember looking back on or remember different than when I look back on it is that the pacing is a little bit slow in some sections. It can be a little bit dialogue heavy, which normally is a good thing because I think the game is funny and very well written. But
it is.
occasionally it's like, there's a little bit of like, okay, walk and talk to this person now, walk and go talk to this other person now, walk and go talk to, and it's just kind of like you
Yeah,
know, it does get a little bit slow in a couple of areas.
it certainly has
Um,
elements of that for sure. And then the only reason I bring up the difficulty as far as a negative for me is it's just I remember in my mind some of these boss fights being like so monumental. Like I remember
yeah,
fighting that piranha in the volcano and being like, "Oh my
yeah,
god, like I killed the piranha." Like it
yeah,
was so
he was
exciting and I
tricky.
just like floored him when I played it this time. So I would have loved some of
Yeah,
that payoff a little bit differently, but you're right about the game with the pacing. For me, I didn't really have an issue with it because to be honest, I buttoned through almost all the dialogue
yeah.
for like those kind of, especially like the peach scenes. They're kind of slow paced and not the best. Although I
Except for
love baking the
baking the
cake.
cake.
Baking the
Baking
cake.
a cake,
It took me
yeah.
2 tries. I'm gonna level with you. It
That's
took me two
right.
tries. I
That's
didn't
right.
count the
Counting that
seconds.
timer, oh
Yeah, the second time I
gosh.
pulled out my phone and I was like, I'm just gonna use this because I don't want to do it a third time. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm blown away by how well it holds up in general. And the thing I always come back to is like, man, why do more modern RPGs not use the action command system in their battles? Mario RPG did it before. Paper Mario did it in this and the sequel. I mean, we played games like Bug Fables that did it. Yakuza Like a Dragon has some of it. But in general, like so many RPGs don't have these type of battle systems, and it makes you so much more engaged. Like even in the basic battles, I'm still having to pay attention and like do the thing just so I can beat it in one turn instead of 2 turns or something and save some HP. And I just think it's such a smart battle system. And then you add in the fact that you have the partners to switch around and decide, okay, who's going to help me the most in this sort of environment. Whether you have like armored enemies, so you need someone that can break that, or there's just little nuances they add, which is more fun than a lot of games where you sort of have the same party in
And
every situation.
yeah, and then also, like, the partners are neat too. I always thought how you could change who goes first because sometimes it's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
well, this partner should go first and jump on the enemy's head to knock them over, and then Mario goes next," or vice versa, and so even though it's pretty simplified in terms of what you can actually do, there is like, and it is simple too in the sense of like, what's the correct call to do on this enemy. It's usually one solution is the best, but there's just enough variety that the battles do feel a little bit more unique as you're playing them, and it's cool meeting a new enemy type for the first time and like, okay, how best do you think I should approach this, and like
Yeah, yeah,
it is good, and the other thing, like, the action commands, like you said, like, that to me is one of the most standout parts of this game, and it is, I think, a big reason why I've fallen off of playing turn-based games in general. Like, I used to play so many as a kid, and I tend to not finish them now, and I think it's because you get to a partway through the game, and you tend to approach battles in the same way every time.
yeah.
And it's just kind of like, like Pokemon's obviously low hanging fruit for this, but it's like, I use this same two moves on this Pokemon every time, and like I'm switching for type advantages. That's all I do. And
Hmm.
you're just kind of like in menus all the time. And, it's like there's no reason that you're in a menu. It's like, oh, I can answer this text message. And then you just kind of lose your immersion and investment. And like a lot of turn based strategies, unfortunately, go that way for me. Like Fire Emblem even gets
Mm,
kind of bogged down with that kind of stuff. But like when you're doing the action commands, you have to be doing the action commands, and you
exactly.
are like, it feels good when you get them, and they're, like, especially for the blocking ones, like, they're not that easy
The
that you
blocking
can
ones can
just
be very
do it
tough.
every time. Like, some of them get pretty tricky, especially in boss fights and with like certain fast enemies that'll kind of try to fake you out sometimes. And so like keeps battles feeling exciting versus being a chore or like something that's blocking you from getting to where the next town or wherever you're trying to go.
Yeah. I think it's just that is something that makes it special for sure. And I think overall, like another reason this game holds up is just the world itself is so well crafted. Mario is always does a good job of having that sort of Disney-esque kind of universe, but something about the aesthetic of Paper Mario and just the way the characters are all paper, and when they turn, they become really thin for a second because it's like the thin type of the sheet, and the way
Mhm.
that sort of the environments open up like dioramas, like everything's made of crafts. It's just such a enticing world to be in. Like you always want to see like what the environment's going to be next. And I even had that feeling as like, oh, I wonder how this looks like going back to remember it. And places like the haunted forest or like the toy box, even I find them so fascinating in terms of how they're making them out of paper and having that whole aesthetic. It's just such a fun world to be in. I think that's what kind of gets you through, even if you're like, oh, these battles are a bit mundane, or like there's a lot of walking and talking, but it's like, yeah, you're walking and talking, but you're walking through this world with, you know, high quality Mario music. It's just such a cheerful place to be most of the time. It's a great feel good game.
It is, it's delightful, and we should amend that. You're not walking, you're spinning through it
Right,
because the
right. It's
spin is
faster.
quicker.
It's faster.
But I agree, like, the every environment, like, you brought it up and I was thinking about, like I was thinking through the chapters, and it's like I can remember every single one of them stands out. Every area is special for some reason because there's just so much love and craft put into this, and, like, they really thought about it. It's like, yeah, how would that, like, unfold to turn into, like, a tree that spouts up, and, like, how would this and, like, they did actually think it through, like,
Hmm.
things are
Hmm.
physically folding and unfolding, and it's just and even then the sequel continues on and just, like,
Well, the
totally
sequel
runs away
is
with
like, yeah.
that, even more so, but, like, the first one, yeah, it is gorgeous to go back to, absolutely. And,
So
like, you'll have one of my other favorite things too is, like, just you'll have, like, on the wall, and there's, like, Goombas, like, his stuck to the wall like a sticker, and then they'll, like, pop out of the wall
yeah,
because
yeah,
they've, like, unstuck, and, like, when you fall, you do the paper, like, you float down because paper doesn't really drop, and
yeah.
it's so
It's got all the
cute.
cute little touches. Like they really, it's such a polished experience. Like they
Yeah.
really, every little aspect has been thought out about in those type of ways. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's an amazing game. I don't want to get too. I'm not going to get too much into all the levels and the plot. Like people are, I'm sure, are familiar with it.
Or
Um,
go play
or
it.
go play it because it's a great game. I mean, there's standard Mario 8 levels, 8 worlds, all that stuff, but it's great. But what I wanted to bring up with, I wanted to do two things before we finish on Paper Mario. I wanted to first tell you about things that I didn't notice as a kid in the game,
Okay.
or things that I've realized about the game since, just
Okay,
to see what
interesting.
you think, or if you notice the same stuff. The first one is that by far the level up system in this game, I think it's scaled really well. Like the enemies adjust how much experience they give you, and when you
Mhm.
level up, you get to 100 star points, and you get to pick either HP, FP, or BP, which is badge points, and the badges is sort of how you equip your different moves and
Like
abilities to
special
Mario, special
skills,
skills.
yeah.
So badge points are by far the best thing you can invest in this game. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it, because even if you invest in the badge points and you can just put a badge on that will increase your health. So if you decide you made a mistake, you can just do that, level your health next time, and then go back and use the badge points for something else. Is by
Yeah.
far the best. And I never really realized that as a kid.
Mhm.
Um, Secondly, the refund badge is amazing. Did you ever use that badge at all when you were playing?
What does it do?
So the refund
What
badge is when you use an item in battle, it refunds you some of the worth of that into your wallet. So
Oh,
you get coins
interesting.
back. And what I loved
Oh,
about it was that in these games, I know a lot of people have this problem. I suffer. We never want to use our inventory.
yeah.
You'll have the best mushrooms, the FP items, like whatever you need, and instead you'll struggle through on like 2 HP instead of healing yourself, because what if I need that mushroom later? But
Yes.
but the refund badge, I felt so much more free, because every time, whenever I wanted, I could just go and have any money I wanted to go buy any items. I was constantly like buying the offensive ones, like the lightning strikes and all that, because you just earn your money back. And it made the game so much more freeing to not have to worry about that.
That is 100% a badge I would never have used
Yeah,
because, yeah, I would just keep my inventory literally forever until I get into a boss fight, and maybe I'll check out 2 things.
right. And that's me too. And that's why I decided this time I'm going to try it out and play a little differently. In the same vein, the quick change badge is like the greatest thing in the
Oh,
game.
yes. Quick
Um,
change, 100%.
Yeah,
I
because
I
usually
definitely agree
switching
with
your
that.
partner in battle will take your turn, so you can't act with one of your two members. With this, you can just swap freely, and it makes it so much more freeing for how you're approaching the combat. So that's great. Now, another thing I noticed is that I'm going to ask you in a minute who your favorite partner is in all this, but who do you think is objectively the best partner? Because I think it's
Now
Lady Bow.
interesting.
She does so much damage even with her basic thing once she gets leveled up. Um,
Lady Bo is a character I don't really remember using a lot as a kid, but when I played it as an adult, we used Lady Bo a lot, so I think she's good. Is it true that Goombario can jump forever?
he can.
So,
Goombario
I would think
has
maybe he is the best character if you're good
yeah.
enough.
So his first, yeah, that's the thing. I think as you do it though, the timing for the action command gets more and
Yeah,
more
harder
specific.
and harder.
So it's not like you can just, otherwise you could literally kill everything in one hit with him. But
Mhm.
yeah. But what I wanted to say more about the partners is I've realized this time that Watt is a lot better than we used to give her credit for. I remember
Okay.
getting Watt and being like, oh, this character, like, garbage. Never used it, never leveled her up. And Watt is great. Like, the basic ability goes through armor, so you don't have to spend FP to fight armored enemies. And then some of the status effects, I know being a kid, right, you always want to use the damaging moves, nothing else. But with Watt, you can stun all the enemies on the screen, and it's quite reliable. And it makes the battles like if you're about to be killed, you can just stun everybody and kill them. You get like 3 turns for free. It's super good, and I don't know why I never realized that before.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair. Watt is a character like, Watt is probably one of the ones I've used the least.
yeah,
Like, there's, like, 2 or 3 I haven't really used much of,
right.
and then some that I definitely would say are, like, my star characters. But Watt is one of them.
Yeah. And finally, the most interesting thing, and this is something I can't believe that was new to me this time. And
Okay.
so, do you know? Now, I hope you don't know about this because I'm gonna feel dumb if you do. Do you know Merlee in the Dry Outpost?
Yeah, the f is that one of the fortune tellers?
Yeah, in the alleyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I never found her before in my life. I did not know you
Oh,
could go and spend money with her to get your well, she gives you bonuses, like you can kind of pay her
you
some
know
money and she'll give you
you
more
know what?
XP or something.
I do know that, but it's very likely that I learned that playing my most recent
Right,
time
yeah.
and didn't know as a kid.
I never knew that. It's kind of this
Mhm.
there's this alleyway in the second world you go
Yeah.
to and you can sort of go down, jump over some boxes or something and you're behind in the alley and she can power you up and you'll have a chance of like taking less damage or being stronger for a turn or getting more experience at the end of a battle. And I always had so much money because of the refund badge, so I just go max her out and get all these bonuses. And
Mhm.
it was like, wow, this is almost like a cheat code for this game that I never used before. It was amazing.
That's so funny. Yeah, I definitely didn't use that as a kid for sure, and it's like it's surreal when it's like a game like this, like, you think you're so intimately familiar with, and it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, there's a whole thing that I just didn't know I've never known
Exactly.
about."
It's so strange,
It's
right?
weird.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyway, I guess to finish off on Paper Mario, I just wanted to ask some questions, just to see
Okay.
how now that we've kind of reminisced and had this nostalgia trip.
Mhm.
Who is your favorite partner in Paper Mario?
See, this is hard. I will tell you my top ones and then stressfully narrow it down. So it's
Yeah.
gonna be between Cooper.
Yeah.
I love Cooper.
Yeah.
Parakarry, and it's I like Lady Bow a lot now,
Yeah.
but as a
Yeah.
kid, not so much. So the nostalgic ones for me are Cooper and Parakarry.
Got you. Yeah.
And I think it's just gotta be Cooper. There's something about him. He's just like the classic, like,
I
just
knew
kind
it.
of
I knew it. I knew it for you
I
for
don't know,
sure.
he's got that scarf, it looks so good, and he's got that love story that he kinda gets a little bit, and he's just like, "I'm from a small village, I'm gonna be a hero." He's like such an anime protagonist.
Yeah, it's true.
He's
It's true.
he's just so endearing.
I really like Cooper as well, but for me, I don't know what it is. Goombario's just always been my
I
guy. I
know,
love
I know,
Goombario.
you've always loved
I
Goombario.
think he's the one that has sort of he's got an ability like called Tattle where you can
Yeah.
sort of scan an enemy. I guess you can then see their health bar. I've always found that super useful. But also, I
Mhm.
just love he's got like such an optimistic kind of viewpoint of like I'm traveling with my hero Mario and like I'm gonna do my best for him and make my family from this little town proud because I'm just a Goomba and
Mhm.
he's I don't know it's something about him just great character. What
Yeah,
a
and, like,
guy.
I remember when you get him, his family's like, "There's no way you're gonna be able to help Mario,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
your self-worth is not that high," and Mario's like, "No, no, no. We
exactly,
will go and be heroes together," and he is yeah, King Mario is great.
exactly.
Got a
Okay,
little
second
hat that he
question.
wears.
Second question.
Okay.
Which was your favorite chapter in Paper Mario?
Oh, this is tougher. Honestly, I think every single one of these, aside from the flower field, comes into contention for favorite chapter. I have a very clear answer for number 2. But for number 1, think it's gotta be the Invincible Tubba Blubba chapter 3,
Really?
even though Tubba Blubba scared me as a kid.
Tubba Blubba scared me as a kid. He's frightening.
He is frightening. When he chases you in that scene, I don't even know if you can lose that
I
because
don't know
you just
either.
run out. Like, I don't know what happens when he catches you, but I am to this day too scared to find out.
Yeah, that's a cool
I
chapter. I like that one a
It's a
lot
cool
too.
chapter.
I
I also really like the, just OG Koopa Bros Fortress,
I think that's what I was gonna say
as
was
a
my favorite.
second.
Yeah, the Koopa Bros are just they're such a funny boss. Like they're so clearly playing on like the Power Rangers or the Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
maybe both at the same time. but the different colors and like the way they have that knockoff Bowser mech is just like pricelessly
Yeah.
funny, I think. It got me. I also really wanted to shout out the second chapter as well, the Dry Outpost. I really like that one. Something about taking the train is always cool. And then the ruins you get into at the end, that sort of palace that rises out of the sand, and you have to go into it and figure out. There's a lot of puzzles in there, and I just really liked that whole section of the game too.
There's a decent complexity to it as well, if I remember, of, like
Mm,
maybe
it's
not so much.
not super tough.
Not super much?
Yeah,
Alright.
yeah,
I remember that being kind of maybe as a kid, that was kind
sure,
of
yeah,
like a
yeah.
challenging level.
Yeah, yeah. And finally, I just wanted to ask you, what's your favorite boss fight? Because there's a lot of interesting boss designs in this. You know, for me, one of them, the one that I didn't really remember a whole lot was the ice guy. So I don't know if I
Mhm.
really love that fight, but my favorite is the toy box. And with fighting all the different shy guys, and then the general guy comes out in a tank, and you have to like destroy his tank before he takes you out. And it's something about that whole thing and it being
It
made of
is
paper, and it's very
it is
fun.
joyful, right? And you get those, like, Shy Guy stacks, and they're,
Yeah,
like, on top of each other, and you gotta knock them off, and
yeah.
yeah, that is was gonna be my honorable mention, and I was gonna give it to the Koopa Bros for
Koopa
best
Bros, yeah,
boss
yeah.
fight for that shitty Bowser Meg that they
Yeah,
get
I think
into.
they're my honorable mention too, so
Yeah,
we're on the same page there. What more can we say, Kate? Paper Mario, fantastic game,
yeah.
holds up to this day.
I have one Paper Mario question for you.
Okay, okay.
Are we going to have the am I gonna get the pleasure of getting to do this again if you go on to replay the Thousand Year
Ooh,
Door?
I hope
Was it good
so.
enough that you wanna continue on and do both games proper?
Definitely it is. That one will be a
Good.
bit tougher though because I mean, maybe we can sort out some sort of emulations thing, but I don't know like where our copy is
Yeah, we
of
gotta get
Paper
find the
Mario.
GameCube. I mean, it exists.
So
There's no way we got rid of it, but
yeah, we'll have to dig it out because if I can find it, that's definitely something I would like to do. I mean, I think I always have preferred the first one to the second for whatever reason, even though the second's sort of more expanded out and technically better. But I don't know, that the
Mhm.
setting of the first one is just so memorable to me that I think
Yeah,
it's still
except
my
for the
favorite.
Glitz Pit.
Except for the
Except for the
Glitz Pit.
Glitz
Glitz Pit is the best.
Glitz Pit's the best.
All right, let's move into the second part of the show for today, though, Kate. We've got a little quick hit news section. Of course, we'll have our news show next week. We hope you join us for that. But just to get this one out of the way, because the month is already May 7th, day as of recording, we have to talk about PlayStation Plus for May and what we're going to be playing for the show. So this month we have, as you probably know, since it's already partway through, we have FIFA 22, Tribes of Midgard, the game that we've seen endless content for, and different things, and Curse of the Dead Gods. So interesting variation. It's sort of soccer and then two kind of top-down action games. Tribes of Midgard, I don't know. You know what? It's funny. We were talking offline, like we weren't recording, and I said I'm gonna pick this for my game. I watched the trailer before I came on
Wait,
here to.
which one? Which of the 25 trailers was
Well,
it?
the one on PlayStation Blog. So
Okay.
you're right though. There was a lot of different trailers. Um, I just can't bring myself to play this, especially since it's like supposed to be co-op, right? And you're supposed to work with
Yeah,
others.
you don't
Who
play
am I gonna
alone.
convince to play this? I don't know. So I think Tribes of Midgard's gonna be the one for me, and that game looks legitimately pretty cool.
Wait, you mean
Curse
you
of the
are
Dead
gonna
God.
play
Curse of
Curse
the
of
Dead
the
Gods.
Gods?
Sorry, Curse of the Dead Gods.
Okay. Alright, alright. You know what? I'm 100% with you. What's funny is about maybe a week before this came out, I Steam shared with another friend, because, I was like, "Oh, you should play, like, all these 30 games I'm excited about," and he actually Steam shared for me for Monster Train was the main thing.
Yeah.
He's like, "You gotta play it," and one of the other games that he owns is Curse of the Dead Gods, and I was like, "Shit, this is a game I've been wanting to play." So I got it on my Steam share, I was so excited, I downloaded it, I haven't started it yet, and then, like, a week after, it's like, "Oh, it's a PlayStation Plus game," so I was getting excited to start this game regardless. I've been told it's Lovecraft Hades, and, like,
Hmm.
those are 2 really big keywords for me. This game looks so fucking good. There's a parry, like, I'm in.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to try it too. I think for me, it's going to come down to like, yeah, it's clearly competing with Hades, and the
Mhm.
thing that made Hades so special to me, aside from being, so technically fun to play, was just the amount of different boons you could get and the way they all interacted together. So I hope this game isn't like too shallow in that aspect. That's the only thing I can see being sort of like, ooh, I don't know.
Heard From what I've heard, the system's a little bit different, and it's a little bit more of like a risk reward system where like you pick up boons and they have positive effects, but they also have downsides. And so I think that could lead to some really interesting like gameplay choices.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's
No,
cool.
that
We'll
sounds
we'll play it
interesting.
and then we'll see what we think.
Sounds interesting. Maybe we'll talk about it on the next episode of this podcast.
Mhm.
So that's PS Plus, Kate. Let's get into the excellent quiz that you've designed for me. I'm very excited to take this. It's been a while, and
Mhm.
yeah, I'll let you take it away.
Wonderful. So yeah, we've got to return to form. And we're in 2022 now, and 2021 wasn't great for video games. Let's be honest, not tons of stuff came out. Most things were delayed. But 2022 is an absolute banger already, and it's only April. And so what I prepared for you is these are four big games that have come out in 2022 to
Excellent.
start the
Okay.
year off strong. And now, while these games are getting 5 stars consistently and they're the cream of the crop, they're fantastic, not everybody agrees, and so there have been some amazingly horrendous Google reviews out there. And so I'm gonna read you a list of 4 games. I'm gonna
Yep.
lead you and then I'm gonna read you 4 hilarious Google reviews, and you have to correctly match up which review goes with which games.
I cannot
And
wait.
so the games I've selected for you today are Kirby and the Forgotten Land,
Yeah.
Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga,
Yeah.
pretty big deal, that game just came out the other week, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and of course, what episode of Circles and Squares would this be if I didn't find a way to bring Elden Ring up
Of course.
as our
Okay.
4th game?
Interesting game selection here. Now, just looking at the list, I feel like it should be obvious which one's talking about Elden Ring because the rest are all kind of more cutesy and whatever. But who's to say what they're talking about? Let's see. I've written the
Well,
games down, so I'm going to try and take some
okay,
notes.
okay, so here we go. This is the first review. I just didn't have as much fun as I did with the others. And now I will preface as well by saying I did slightly adjust some of these just to, not completely spoil them based on the review. So
Hmm. Hmm.
if they sound a little awkward, that might be why. Main reason they sound awkward is, just whoever wrote them. So I just didn't have as much fun as I did with the others. The levels are pretty boring and too simple to me. In my opinion, a proper hub and mission selection would have gone a long way. It all just feels like a jumbled up game to me. I love the parts. I feel like the parts I loved were highlighted in past games and were just sped through at light speed in this one. I guess I just expected something more along the lines of old game. But times move forward, not backwards. If you really enjoyed it, I'm not knocking you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's okay to enjoy something I can't. Obviously, I'm in the minority and most people like it. I'm just saying there are others like me who thirst for the olden days of simple combos, a simple health system, a simple use of blank mechanic, I cannot spoil, and really just the classic feel and charm that has replay value beyond simply getting 100%. Sadly, I advise against getting this game. Just play the old ones if you have an
Wow.
itch. I'm sorry. And then he put 3 crying faces.
Wow. Interesting. I honestly had an idea of what I was going to guess for that. Um,
Mhm.
but then that last little bit about wanting the mechanic from the old games really has thrown me off.
See?
Really thrown me off. You
These
know what? I'm
games
not
have a
gonna.
little more in common than, it seems like
Yeah,
they
yeah,
originally did, didn't they?
it's true. Okay, so I took some notes on that, so I'm gonna try and refrain from asking you too much because I about these
Okay.
questions. So before I guess, I want to maybe hear one
Hear
more
some more? Okay.
review. Yeah.
So here's the next one. Okay. So the best way I can describe this game is just pretend you're making bread. It's like they
Okay,
took
close my
the
eyes.
dough and slapped on a price sticker and put it in the oven and decided, hey, if we take less time baking it and just raise the temperature, nobody would notice. Yet again, they were wrong. It's half baked. It looks terrible in comparison to other baked goods they've pumped out. To top it off, when you take a massive bite out of this doughy mess they call a game, they give you instructions that are too long. Cool. I understand the game mechanics. Please stop jamming it down my throat. It's like they're worried that if we eat the bread too fast, we'll choke. So they just water it down so much that a toddler could understand it, to the point that I'm no longer consuming bread, but just eating a mushy paste full of crumbs that is somehow filled with air pockets full of missing content. In conclusion, this game is exactly like the bread made in Hell's Kitchen that was undercooked and left out of the packaging too long. I am Gordon Ramsay, stuffs raw.
Hell yeah. What a review.
And this might be my favorite review I've ever heard.
That's a great review. I love the bread analogy. It's
Good.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That one, I'm pretty sure I know what game that is. I think that's Pokemon Arceus. And I'll tell you why. It's because
Mhm,
there's this online sentiment of like this, they pump them out, which they do, and people
mhm,
will buy it because of the brand. And it
mhm.
looks terrible. I know that game was really panned for by people who wanted to look for graphical inconsistencies to have a point against it. Um, like I said on I don't think I've talked about it on the show actually, but I can get past that because I liked other things
Mhm.
about it. I don't know why I'm even talking about this game as if I'm right. I don't know if I'm right. But you know what? The other thing that's
Maybe.
giving it away to me is that you mentioned there's too many tutorials. And I know that's another
Mhm.
thing that people really didn't like about this game.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of tutorials at the start
Okay.
of the game.
Alright. That
So,
is an interesting deductive,
yeah.
reasoning, and,
I'm
we'll
gonna say
see if
Pokemon is number 2 here.
tentative
Number 2. I'm
Pokemon.
gonna
Okay.
write that one in. I'm gonna leave the first one for a little bit longer, and I'll hear review 3.
Okay. Alright, so here's the next one. Well, I must admit that my research into this game consisted of a 10-second watch of a 1-minute clip. I saw a mythical creature. He did describe this creature. I will not.
Mhm.
And he was sold. So, that's always good research, 10 seconds of a clip. That's all you need sometimes. Um, but I didn't know what I was expecting. I didn't know what I was expecting. But a game with graphics of the early Duke Nukem era definitely wasn't it. The NPC intelligence and physical ability the NPC intelligence had the physical ability of my great granddad, which is more of an insult than you might think as he passed away years ago.
Oh, no.
The storyline reminds me of Pinocchio. If Pinocchio was less exciting, had no storyline, and the main character was less interesting. In fact,
Damn.
having a puppet character running around looking to become a real boy would be much more riveting, and the thought of that makes me consider what I'm doing with my life. After the initial excitement of the opening logo of the game developer, it's all downhill from there.
Ooh, I love that closing statement. That was vicious.
These are good reviews, let me tell you.
So
So,
that one to me is gonna be either Kirby or Elden Ring, depending on who's reviewing it. I feel like Elden Ring is a pretty beautiful game, and I don't know if people would critique it, but it's also I really don't feel that game is always at the pinnacle of graphics either, you know? Like I feel like some of the more Last of Us 2 sort of tight experiences are a little bit higher graphically. So I don't know if someone would like I would never complain about the graphics in Elden Ring, but I could see a certain person who doesn't like it sort of stacking that on.
do
But then
you
hmm?
do you want me to comment on that or no
No,
because
don't
it's
comment.
okay.
I don't want to hint.
Okay, good.
The enemies are dumb is something that I really feel about Elden Ring. But I could also see that being something that people would say about Kirby or even Lego Star Wars, to be honest. Oh, damn, it could be Lego Star Wars because there's creatures in Star
See?
Wars too.
These games all feel like they're
Damn.
totally different, and yet these
You know what though?
reviews.
I will say the reason I don't think it's Lego Star Wars is because the main character is not interesting, and I think that's the one thing Star Wars has is like characters from that universe. Whereas you could
Right,
argue your Elden Ring character and Kirby are both kind of just they don't have a lot of personality.
right,
So
they're self-inserts per se.
yeah, okay. You know what? Let's
Okay.
hear the last review. I'd like to
For the
hear
last one?
get put it
Okay.
all on the table.
I'm gonna tell you this last review is just terrible and not gonna help you in the slightest, but I thought it was fun.
Okay.
So this has actually 2 different reviews. These were back to back, and it cracked me up. So these are the first 2 Google reviews for this one is, "I know you're just filtering by 1 star to check the star reviews, so here I am. This game is really good. Everyone loves it. It's not terrible difficult, which is good, and it's fun. You will definitely love playing this game after coming home from a long day. Just buy it and stop reading 1-star reviews." Immediately followed by, "This game mad poopy, straight doggy cheeks." I would rather step in a puddle of water while wearing socks than play this game.
Oh my god.
So there's a little duality going on with the reviews
Wow.
for this game. It's not
Okay.
helpful. There's not a lot to latch
No,
onto
no.
here,
But
but
that's a great review though.
it's
Straight
a great
mad
review.
poopy, straight doggy cheeks.
What is
Who
Doggy
says
cheeks.
that?
I've never heard the phrase straight doggy cheeks. What does that
I
mean?
love it. That's amazing. I mean, I can envision what it means, but
I mean, you know it's an insult, but, like, what the hell does it mean? So,
Okay,
I love this.
let's deduce what's going on here. So that one obviously is going to be the one that I leave till the end because it gives me no context of anything um, at all. So it really comes down to, I think, the first review
Okay.
saying that the game's boring, simple levels, hub mission select would have been better. The game's jumbled. To me, you wouldn't say that about Elden Ring because it's like you're exploring a map. You wouldn't be asking for a mission select for Elden Ring. So I don't think that's that, which means that's either going to be Kirby or Lego Star Wars. Now, Kirby, I know that the way you select the mission you're going to is you're kind of flying over a map on your warp star and you can kind of just click and go. So I feel like you wouldn't really complain about the hub or mission select in that game. So I think number one is going to be Lego Star Wars. Especially like
Like how
selecting
you
something
thought through that.
like they say they want to select something like older, the older style, and
Mhm.
so I know there's like obviously all these games have predecessors, but um yeah, and you wouldn't say that about Pokemon because people don't like some of the old stuff of Pokemon. I don't think you'd say that about Elden Ring because it's like it is very similar in a lot of ways to the previous stuff. So that's going to be Lego Star Wars
Okay.
number one.
Okay.
I'm
You
really
just
giving it. I'm
have
really taking notes here. I'm
you
really
really
practicing.
are. You're doing some good
Yeah.
deduction. Let's see
You
if
know
you
what?
can
It's
follow
just been so
through.
long. I got to do my best here.
So
We were just
you've
talking
got
about
Elden
Connor.
Ring.
Connor the detective. Maybe I'm
Yes,
channeling him,
Detective Connor.
or maybe I'm being overconfident. I could be totally wrong. Um.
Over Confident?
Okay.
Alright, let's
All
breeze
right.
past that. You
Last
got
one
Elden
here.
Ring, and you got Kirby left.
Last one here. So again, it comes down to this bread baking one now, or no, that's the Pokemon
Yeah,
one. It comes
you
down
Pokemon Bread
to
Baking,
this
yeah,
next one about the Duke Nukem graphics, saw a creature and they
and they
were
wish it was
sold.
Pinocchio. Really
Yeah,
wish it was
reminds them of
Pinocchio.
Pinocchio. Enemies are dumb, main character less interesting, opening logo great, but then all downhill. Now, I don't like the fact that I'm not super familiar with Pinocchio as a story, but thinking between Kirby and Elden Ring, I feel like the fact that they saw a creature and they were sold within 10 seconds really seems like an Elden Ring thing because of all the stuff you encounter. But the Duke Nukem graphics is very damning of Kirby. So, and they both have dumb enemies. But you know what? Because of that dumb enemy statement, I'm going to go with Elden Ring just because that's
Okay.
something I've said, and so I'll stick with my guns on it.
Right,
And
and
that
so then you
means,
think Kirby's straight doggy
yeah, I think
cheeks.
Kirby's straight doggy cheeks. And to be
I mean,
fair,
Kirby if Kirby inhaled a dog, he would have doggy
that's
cheeks.
right. That's right. And I
So,
think, yeah, good but not terribly difficult is the one thing they say in there. And it's like, well, I don't think many people would say that about Elden Ring. But Kirby, on the other hand, is known for being pretty simple. So let's go with that. I'll go Elden Ring 3, Kirby 4, Lego Star
okay.
Wars 1, Pokemon 2.
Is that your final answer?
Lock 'em in. Final answer.
I can tell you, we have an unprecedented moment here on Circles and Squares because you have 100%ed my quiz. Congratulations.
All right. We've never come perfect before, right?
We've never come perfect. You know, I really
Wow.
thought I was gonna trip you up with, the Lego Star Wars one. I thought that would might trip you up for Elden
Hmm.
Ring because you get those people talking about, like, um it's so much about, like, "Oh, the other old ones are better," and people are like, "Oh, this
Hmm.
is just big Dark Souls," and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah. I think
But
you know what?
yeah,
It would have tripped me up if it wasn't for the mission select thing. It just
the
wouldn't make
hub and
sense
mission
to
select,
put a mission
yeah.
select in Elden Ring.
Well, the
But
other thing I was thinking too is I was hoping you might interpret that as, like, a quest log because people complain that
mm-hmm.
there's no, like, quest log,
Yeah, right, right, right.
and, like so I was thinking, like, "Oh, maybe if you skew it that way," but yeah, mission select is definitely not the right wording.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, you can let us know how you did at home by writing in to circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com or getting in touch with us on Twitter at C&S Pod. Of course, those links are down below wherever you're listening to this or watching us on YouTube. But before we go, someone in the last couple of weeks, I guess, has written into our listener mailbag, and we always like to answer a question at the end of the show to round it out. So, Kate, what is our listener mail question for the week?
So this is one that you promised me you have a very fun answer for, so I'm excited. But our listener mail is pretty simple. It's kind of a fun little cute question. And it's, what game are you ashamed of, either to say you've played and enjoyed or just as an experience?
All right.
And we're never shaming anyone for enjoying a certain game here, but we definitely like, have funny moments when you're like, "What am I doing?" Like, and
Hmm,
so
hmm.
that's how I've interpreted this
Yeah,
question.
exactly. Okay. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Sure, I'll go first because I think you're sitting on something good. So for me, I had trouble thinking of a game that I felt like ashamed to be playing. But I definitely had a moment. I was even just actually talking about it yesterday. A friend and I were in the car. We're driving to our D&D weekly, and we were chatting about Destiny, and we're chatting about Divinity and Destiny. Actually, two really good games, and we're talking about, like how in Divinity, like there's just so much to read, and if you play with a lot of people, it can kind of be tough to follow along with what everybody's doing in the story. And I was saying like I'm the kind of person that's like I gotta read everything, and I like to be super up to date on the lore, and like if you don't know what's going on, you're an idiot. It's your fault for not like paying attention to everything.
Hmm.
And then I play Destiny. I talked about how Destiny's kind of some rough onboarding. And it doesn't do a great job of conveying all the story and the lore to everybody. And so I kind of had two options when I got into Destiny. I was like, no one else is a new player. And so they're not going through all this like stuff where they want to be reading these like quest dialogues that I'm doing because they've done this quest 10 million times. And so, you're in a voice chat, everybody's joking around. It's hard to hear what the character's saying in the cutscene that you get kind of very little of. And I just feel like I've got no context and I'm missing everything. And I've become that person that I don't even read shit anymore in Destiny.
Hmm.
I just accept the quest and I go because I don't know what's going on. And I've just kind of like come to terms with the fact that like I'm either spending the next 6 months reading Wikipedia articles or like I'm just fucking dicking
Yeah, you've
around.
given up. Yeah.
And I've given up, and it's a shame because Destiny has some really cool shit going on in it. Some characters are really neat. The lore is amazing. The world's fantastic. I want to engage with it, but I'm just that asshole. So I'm a little bit ashamed of being that person. And the funniest culmination of this is last time we were playing, I was playing with a friend, and he's like my Destiny go-to guru. This guy is like, okay, I got to do this in Destiny. Please do it with me. Like, you
Hmm.
know,
Run me
kind of
through.
holds
Run
my
me through. Get me
kind of
through.
holds me hand, like he piggybacks me and carries me along through the game. And we're playing with him and a friend, and they're like, like you come across like, you're just fucking clueless, is what he said. They just everyone just like disappointed, like you're so clueless. Like, what do you mean? And then like 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, I've no like, why isn't your thing upgraded? Like, what do you mean? And you get like this little like it's like your little ghost. He's like your companion. He does stuff for you in game. And you get cosmetic options to like, put your little ghost. Mine's looks like a little chicken right now. He's super cute. And I'm like, "Why isn't your ghost upgraded?" I'm like, "What do you mean, why isn't my ghost upgraded?" So it turns out that's like a whole thing that you can like upgrade him, and like it's a mechanic that you just put points into. And I've just played this whole game without my ghost being upgraded. And just like shit like that happens all the
Hard
time. It's like,
mode.
I don't know. Nobody told me I could do that. Like maybe I should have known. And I just feel like I'm just like pathetically helpless playing this game at all times. I don't know who anyone is, and like
No,
I don't know.
you know what? I
What
had a
about
similar
you?
experience when I played Destiny 1. We played with, I think there was 3 of us, and one of us was like very experienced and kind of guiding us through, and we were like, "Okay, we're going to go meet at so and so NPC." And I'm like, "Look, you're going to have to tell me like like who this
Yeah,
is."
where is that guy?
Like I don't
Like,
know who
you
you're
talk
talking
to him,
about.
like, all the fucking times, like, I don't know who that
Yeah,
is. Like,
yeah.
the we've got a shout out as well. I wasn't originally thinking of this, but shout out, there's a character called the Drifter. He's like a cool, edgy character. He's like in charge of one of the game modes. I know who the Drifter is. Like, one of the staple game modes is like his game, and I like this mode. I know who the Drifter is. We're talking about it the other day, and I'm trying to think of the Drifter. I was like, I can't think of his name. And I was like, you know what? That guy, you know who he is. Like, Craig? I just called him Craig. And Connor looks at me, he's like, Craig? He's like, are you fucking kidding? Like, the guy's name is just the Drifter. It's a title. That's it. I'm like, you don't think his name could be Craig?
Who
So
knows?
now
You got to
he's
look into the lore
Craig.
now.
You gotta
That's what
look
you got
into
to
the
do.
lore. So shout out to Connor and how much he hates when I call the Drifter Craig, because
That's a
I'm never
hilarious.
calling him anything else from now on. It's
That's
Craig.
I love your answer because it's like totally like it's like what do you you took the question as being like ashamed of the way you play a game instead of
Yeah.
instead of
I'm
a game
ashamed I'm
itself.
not ashamed of the game, I'm ashamed of
Yeah.
myself.
All right. So this question for me to say either are you ashamed to say either you've played or enjoyed the experience? Mine's more of a game to say that I'm ashamed that I've played because I don't think I really necessarily enjoyed it. But a couple of years ago, I was browsing through Steam, right? I'm not on there super
Mhm.
often. I don't play a lot of games on computer. But sometimes you
Mhm.
go through the Steam sale, you're like, you see something for like $1 and you're like,
Right.
"Oh, $1? I'll just
Mhm.
buy this and like see what it is because for X or Y reason." So
Mhm.
I think I even found this game for like 75 cents. It wasn't even $1. But I played and I downloaded and played to completion the educational game from like Windows 1995 that we played in elementary school, Zoombinis.
Oh my god, I
Do you
remember
remember
Zoom
Zoombinis?
I do, that was the best part of going to the computer
It
lab, we just played a
it
shit ton
seriously
of
was. It
Zombies.
seriously was. But I saw it on the Steam store and I was like, first of all, like, what? This is on Steam? But then I was like, okay, it's so cheap. Like, I'm gonna download it and just like,
Yeah.
see what it's like. Oh my god, what a game. It's so hilarious and like the whole idea I guess is that you're solving little puzzles and you have these little blue sort of jelly bean characters, but they're all like sort of randomly generated and they can have different eyes or like a different haircut
Yeah, or
or
like legs.
different legs like a spring instead of legs or like 3 shoes instead of one or different things. And the whole idea is you go through the game and you have like you know, different paths that they have to take, but you have to sort them in a different way, or like you have to organize your Zumbinis in a certain way to do these different puzzles. And it's so easy, and you can totally see the educational stuff behind it. And like it's just such a weird game. It's ugly. The characters aren't super nice. There's a couple characters that are voice acted, and like the guy that demands you give him a pizza. I don't know if you remember this. He's like,
I
"Make
remember
me a pizza," and like whatever. It's like it's so hilariously like just such a strange experience to go back and play as an adult. Like, why did I do this? It only took me like an hour to go through the whole game. I don't think I messed up a single puzzle. Like, it's you just look at it and you're like, this is so obvious, you know. But yeah, I as an adult, probably 3 or 4 years ago, um, you know, played Zumbinis and beat it.
Sound like you're in a confessional, like,
I know.
I did this. You
I
know
kind of
what's
feel like I
funny?
am.
You know what the best part of this story is? Like, you're not a '90s kid if you didn't if unless you played Zombies. Like, Zombies was fucking
Yeah, it's
fantastic
like Zumbinis
at
and
the
Oregon
time.
Trail, or like the two,
Yeah.
or that I
Yeah,
remember.
I think Oregon Trail's a little older, and then you get to Zombies is, like, the next one. But what's funny about that is that as ashamed as you are, my biggest takeaway is that I could Steam share and beat Zombies
You should.
because I don't think I ever beat it as a kid.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
don't
I did
think I ever
either.
finished it, and that might be because, it was a little bit more difficult at the time when you're 6, and part of it too is, like, you only had so much time in the computer lab, so,
That's the
like,
problem, I
you
think,
didn't
yeah.
always make it to the last couple levels.
Yeah.
But, like, for an hour, like, I kinda owe it to myself, right, to beat
I don't know.
Zoomies.
If I were you, I would say you just should look up a YouTube video and, like, kinda scroll through and just
Right.
see what the game's about. I can't say that you're gonna get much satisfaction from solving the puzzles in Zoombinis or, you know, I can't say I could recommend it, but anyway, yeah, that's my answer. Thank you for the question, Matthias. Always nice to have a funny question to answer like this one.
Mhm.
And like I said at the top of the segment, if you would like to ask us a video game related question, or really anything else, you can email us at circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com or get in touch with us on our Twitter account. All the links are in the episode description. We love answering your questions, comments. Tell us a story. Tell us about your experience playing Zumbinis. We'd love to hear about it. I'm sure you had a great time. So that's going to be us for the episode. It's great to be back. We're glad to be here. And we'll be back again next week with our news show, recapping, the goings on of the last little bit. So look forward to that. We'll see you on the next show.